The Neo Reality Entertainment brand expands with a relaunch of the Neo Reality Collective Pop Culture News Talk. Your host, Eric Brown, gives his insights and thoughts in the ever-expanding news world of comic books, professional wrestling, gaming, TV, and movies. Be sure to donate to the brand and keep up to date with additional content on YouTube channels such as Neo Reality Entertainment, NRE The Wrestleverse, and NRE Pop Culture Omniverse.
Today's edition of Neo Reality Collective is brought to you by Anchor.fm, a free distribution service podcasting hosting platform that allows you to record your podcast on your phone or computer. Anchor will distribute your podcast for you so it can be heard on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, and so much more. You can even make money from your podcast with no minimum listenership. It's everything you need to make a podcast in one place. Download the free Anchor.fm app or go to Anchor.fm to get started today. Thank you and enjoy the episode. Welcome everyone to Neo Reality Collective. I'm your host Eric Brown, back again. Had to be on break for a little bit, but we're back. We're not really talking much about news this week and whatnot. We're talking about one piece of news that was very important for a lot of people in the world of comics, at least. Hickman is leaving X-Men. I don't know how much longer I can go with that. Yep, Entertainment Weekly came out as part of their big interview that with Hickman, Jonathan Hickman, the head of X, that he is departing the X-Men line after his upcoming Inferno miniseries wraps up. So, yeah. Hickman tells Entertainment Weekly that his initial plan for the X-Line has been massively expanded thanks to the contributions from other writers and artists who came in to write the comics alongside him, such as Gary Duggan, Al Ewing, T.E. Howard, Benjamin Percy, Seb Sipper, Seb Wells, Leon Williams, and more. And Hickman goes ahead and says in his interview, plans have changed entirely. When I pitched the X-Men story I pitched a very big, very broad, 3-act, 3-event narrative, the first of which was House of X, and while this loosely worked as a 3-year plan, I told Marvel upfront that I honestly had no idea how long the first part would last, because there were a lot of interesting ideas that I had seeded that other creators would want to play with, so we left this rather open-ended. I was also pretty clear with all the writers that I came to the office what the initial 3-act plan was, so no one would be surprised when it was time for the line to pivot. Hickman continues. So we're going to cover this interview part, and then I'll go in the second half of this video or podcast to explain the second half to give my thoughts on it. However, I also knew that I was cooking with a dynamite, and it was very possible that what I had written in House of X and the ideas contained within it was not actually the first act of a 3-act story, but something that resonated more deeply and worked more like a giant-sized X-Men, where it would represent a paradigm shift in the entire line of X-Men and for a prolonged period of time. So during the pandemic, when the time came for me to start pointing things toward writing the second act event, I asked everyone if they were ready for me to do that, and to a man, everyone wanted to stay in the first act. It was really interesting because I appreciated that House of X resonated with them to the extent that they didn't want it to end, but the reality was that I knew I would be leaving the line early. It shows Hickman has slowly been bowing out. The flagship X-Men comics, which Hickman had been writing since House of X and Powers of 10, concluded in fall 2019, was recently relaunched by Duggan and Lorenz. The current New Mutants book, which was originally co-written by Hickman and Ed Brisson, and was taken over last year by Alea, the artist Rodriguez remained. Last week, Hickman and other high-profile comic creators announced they were beginning new projects on Substack, but though the timing matches up, these aren't exactly closely related. Hickman will continue working on Marvel even as he launches 3 Moons, 3 Worlds from artists Mike Delamundo and Mike Huddleston. He just won't be writing monthly mutant comics for a while. So, this is what he also says. Marvel doesn't really pay me to just write ongoing monthly books. There's an exception for me to write bigger books that have a wider reach than that. Hickman tells EW in an effort to facilitate both things, we spent the last 6 months or so reorienting the line, me creating INFERNO to assist with that, and then bringing in some new writers to add to the existing team. Then plan for the next several years of X-Books. So after INFERNO, I will be leaving to go work on my next big Marvel thing. And starting in January, the X-Line will rocket forward, starting with a new weekly series that leads into a very cool refocused line of books. Yes, it's taken us a little while to get everything assembled correctly, but the end result, everything that's coming out to INFERNO, is going to be pretty great. So, yeah. So there were some teasers that were released around this time where they're hinting that there's more to this INFERNO event, and they use teasers from the previous INFERNO event as a reference for it, where they go with Xavier, Emma Frost, Magneto, our leaders can't be trusted. Mystique, Moore, Metagra, and Destiny, our enemies can't be trusted. Colossus, Psylocke, and Bishop, our allies can't be trusted. Basically, the idea is trust no one. So get ready for that excitement. So yeah, Hickman is leaving the X-Line. Now he doesn't say he's leaving the X-Men comics. It does suggest that he's still going to be the head of X. I don't know if that's the case, but we're doing some double checking on this. But Hickman and going ahead and abdicating his position, and Hickman seems to still be somewhat connected with all this, but yeah. So this is going to lead to a weekly X-Men event that will lead into another X-Men line relaunch. As for Hickman, he's moving on to his next big Marvel project. So yeah, that's the interview that he gave to Entertainment Weekly. So those were my interpreted thoughts on that. I'll get into I talked about the interview. So let's go into the commercial break, and then we'll get back to you guys with the second part of this conclusion and talk about really much of the details of the wider implications that were made in this interview. Take care. Welcome back, everyone. So yeah, let's dig really deep into this and give a proper analysis of this interview regarding Hickman's departure from the X-Line. Our plans have changed entirely. When I pitched the X-Men story I want to do, I pitched a very big, very broad 3-act, 3-event narrative. The first of which was House of X. While this loosely worked as a 3-year plan, I told Marvel up front that I honestly had no idea how long the first part would last, because there were a lot of interesting ideas that I had seeded that other creators would want to play with, and so we left this route open-ended. I was pretty clear with all the writers that came into the office what the initial 3-act plan was, so no one would be surprised when it was time for the line to pivot. So, if I had to decipher everything that was going on here, Hickman was the head of X, as in everything that went, while there were editors, there were continuity editors, there were directors on this, it ultimately came down to Hickman of what he exactly wanted to do with the X books and how the story beats that connect to all this in order to get to the next big event would all pivot out to. But however, he did not give a rather massively detailed thing. He more like pitched the in-betweens that leads into it. So he would have House of X Powers of 10, he would have Sword of 10, 10 of Swords, and then he would have Inferno. Or it seems like 10 of Swords wasn't the second event of the 3-year plan. I'm not 100% certain on that. And the pandemic changed certain things that led to this whole departure for Hickman, because he had plans to put the X books in the digital space, but then COVID stopped, and COVID stopped hurting the comic book industry, and things went back in order. So that led to the 3 Worlds, 3 Moons project he's doing on with Substack. But this is where things got interesting. Hickman had this 3-act plan. That means he had an ending envisioned, which if I had to guess, he had a plan that would eventually leave the Krakoa era, or leave in a position where everything's ended, but they can still go with the Krakoa era and move forward with their own visions. Hickman, however, told them all up front, yes, this era will end, or it will be in a point where you could do whatever you want after I finish the story. But this is the problem that Marvel got Okay, how do I put this? How do I put this more delicately? Remember in WWE, if those who watch professional wrestling, because when I think of comic books and wrestling, I think of shared universe concepts because that's how I see things. Remember if you've heard the stories about Ryan Ward, who was the lead writer of SmackDown during the second brand extension era, and Paul Heyman during his first brand extension as the lead writer. For WWE, you were doing too much of a good job, so you would be booted from the thing, and then we would sabotage the product just to make the other show look better, because that was the idea. Raw was number 1, SmackDown was number 2. It can't be bigger than the big show, than the A show. SmackDown will always be, quote, the B show. Therefore, anything that made it good, anything that was working right, we can't have that. That goes against our initiative of audience of one, which is a contradiction on everything that says Vince loves competition, because he clearly doesn't, or else he wouldn't have screwed people over. Paul Heyman would have still been running SmackDown until he got to his end game, and then Ryan Ward would have probably still been writing SmackDown to his end game till they wanted to change things up. But instead, WWE operates with, you're doing too much of a good job? Well, F you. Marvel, however, operates the other extreme on this, when a writer presents stuff that is just way so good. Hickman said this: however, I also knew that I was cooking with dynamite. It is very possible what I had written House of X and the ideas contained within was not actually the first act of a 3-act story, but something that resonated more deeply and worked more like a giant-sized X-Men, would represent a paradigm shift in the entire X-Men line for a prolonged period of time. So during the pandemic, when the time came for me to start pointing things towards writing the second act event, I asked everyone if they were ready for me to do it, and to a man, and everyone wanted to stay in the first act. It was really interesting because I appreciate that House of X resonated with them to the extent that they didn't want it to end, but the reality was that I knew I would be leaving the line early. So, yeah. I don't know if Ten of Swords was Hickman's original envision. I think it was, but then they expanded it because 15 issues was the original plan, then they expanded it to 22, which was a little bit of a kind of thing. You could have had tie-ins, but not really connect with the overall story and still make it 22 chapters. But yeah, moving on from that. But like, this is the thing that Marvel did. They went the opposite extreme, where we like this idea, we don't want to leave it. It's too much. It's too good. It makes us a lot of money. So yeah, Hickman came in with the idea that he had a 3-act plan, how this would all come to an end, and Marvel liked the first act so much they didn't want to leave the first act. So you're kind of in this weird position where now it's like, how do we do this now? Because Hickman was the leader. He was the captain of the ship, and the crew just basically overthrew him, except there's no leader now. So this leads to this question I had. With how this was originally presented, was Ten of Swords and the Hellfire Gala part of the 3-act structure plan? I think Ten of Swords was, but they might have changed some stuff up just to keep things up for the next chapter in this whole event. Hellfire Gala, I look at it now, I'm starting to think, while I had fun with the event, I honestly think it wasn't Hickman's plan. Now, the Scarlet Witch being killed off, that's a different topic altogether. Like, they had set ideas out there, but now it's like, what do we do with this route? I'm kind of curious to know what they mean. And he's not really, I don't know if he's mad exactly, like we're just getting text out of this, I don't know if he was mad, but he did say that he appreciated that the House of X stuff resonated with them so strongly to the extent they didn't want this era to end. But he knew it has to be one or the other. Marvel put Hickman in basically a position where you have to choose. Do you stay and work on something that you know can't end because Marvel management decided, no, we don't want it to end, and then probably take a much longer period of time to convince them I can end this era, or leave? Marvel had put this idea, one or the other has to go. If there is no Krakoa era, Krakoa era staying around for like another 20 years or so, if Marvel does keep that kind of status quo up, then there can't be a Hickman. If there's a Jonathan Hickman, then they have to end the Krakoa era eventually with him, if that was the original plan. So, yeah. This is the thing that bugged me a little bit when I heard this. I get Marvel's viewpoint. They want to make money out of this, and this was a big sell for them, the Krakoa era, this new different direction for the X-Men, instead of being the same Winchester School or broken Winchester School or divided X-Men line, or the oversimplification of them, or the derailing of their momentum because Fox owned the rights. So yeah, they wanted to do the Separatist Nation idea, have made X-Men more like villains to an extent, with how he was writing Xavier and Magneto, because how they just made them look more either villainous or militaristic. And now it's like, it did seem like they were going a route that probably teased Krakoa going to war with Wakanda and or Atlantis. I definitely think that was one of the big events planned. Hickman writing an event where he had a war with Wakanda and Atlantis because Krakoa has issues with them. Namor doesn't want to join with Krakoa. He still believes he's superior to all because Namor is an asshole at times, to the extent of extremely killing planets and even admitting that while he was wrong, he would do it again. And Wakanda has kind of this idea that, we're Wakanda, we can do better. We are perfectly alright where we are. So yeah, they didn't care, and they didn't really care about the resources they could have gotten from Wakanda, but not recognizing them as a sovereign state was probably that might come back to bite them. So yeah, I do kind of get what Hickman was trying to go for, and I get what Marvel was trying to do. But now it looked like what could have been a 3-year, 3-event plan now could have likely been stretched out for 9 years, and you would have to do 3 years worth of first Act 1, 3 years of Act 2, and 3 years of Act 3 just to end the story. And Hickman probably didn't want to stay around for that and wanted to do more original works, but he is said to still be sticking around with the Marvel stuff and might come back. So he could still get his way. He's still sticking around with Marvel, which does surprise me. I get the feeling... He did say that after X-Men, back in 2019, he said after X-Men, I don't think there's anything left for me to do with Marvel. All the dream projects I have left are in DC Comics. And remember, he was pitched at one point to write Justice League or Legion of Heroes at one point, and he clearly had a plan for them in mind if they hired him, which I would have loved to have seen. I hope we still get that one day. But it does feel like, the writers and the Marvel team went ahead and was like, this era is just so good, we don't want it to end. Except, you will end it. You ended Genosha, you ended the mutant reign when Decimation. What makes you think Krakoa is going to stick around forever? It can't. So, remember how New X-Men started? Let's blow up Genosha. What's to stop another writer saying, let's destroy Krakoa? Except then it would be really insulting for people because they weren't given the ending they were initially promised. Hickman had probably a different idea, and it wasn't the idea that the next writer who takes over the X-Men line will have. He'll just blow up Krakoa and kill everyone, and we could start fresh. Or, you could just kill more Matagra and then restart the timeline, because that's how reincarnation works, it seems, in that universe. But yeah, it looks to me like a bad situation all around, I feel. If I was the writer, if I was the head lead of all this, and I was like, look, I don't have a full-fledged plan. Like, I respect that you guys like this, but we need to eventually we can't really make this era last forever, or an extended period of time. We killed Genosha, and it didn't get the ending it should have really gotten. It just sort of, let's start the issue off with a shocker. And then Bendis comes in and says, let's end everything that Grant Morrison built up and decimate the entire mutant species. And that was even shorter. I think Geonosis was around since the 90s. But yeah. And Hickman had to build off those two ideas to tie with the House of 10 and House of X and Powers of 10 event. I don't know what they're going to do now with Krakoa's nation state. They could probably end it in next year if Marvel went that route, says they're going to do a weekly comic series with it to end the series, to end all events. Like I said this, I honestly, for my money's sake, I honestly, if they end the entire line after Inferno's done, I'll be freaking grateful, because I could now no longer have Marvel stuff, have a huge amount of X books in my collection. I just have to fight for a few more months, which could probably kill me, but still. Oh man, I'm crazy. But yeah, I would have loved to see how Hickman got his way, if Hickman got his way and had this whole thing planned out. Like, it's not like as hostile it seems as his original ending with Marvel, where he had the Secret War stuff, and they promised him, okay, we won't do any launches, we'll do a bunch of tie-ins with one-shots to do with the Battle World stuff, but we will not continue everything post-Secret Wars until you finish. And there were issues, and then Marvel did it anyways, and that soured the relationship between the two, and yeah, it didn't look good, so they were like, oh fuck. So when DC Comics came in and offered Hickman a position at their company during the Rebirth Initiative, then Marvel got down on their knees and were like, please come back, we'll give you anything you want. Anything you want. X-Men. Okay, fuck Disney, can you buy the rights back? We'll buy the company. Okay, you can have X-Men. I think that's how the meeting went. But yeah, I don't know what he's gonna do next to top his X-Men line or his other stuff he's done in the past. I don't even know what he could really do. Like, if you say he could do Spider-Man, I'm like, he kind of already did with the Fantastic Four run, which is kind of depressing when the best written Spider-Man since J. Michael Straczynski, except for certain stories, is with the guy who's writing him that's not even his flagship title. That's what I keep hearing from people. Like, Hickman wrote the best Spider-Man story, and it wasn't even in a Spider-Man story. Yeah, that's kind of depressing when you think about it. Like, he always wrote Spider-Man in Fantastic Four, Future Foundation, and sure enough, he also wrote Spider-Man in Avengers. Yeah, do you not see the problem that it seems Spider-Man can be better written by someone who's not the main star of the writing book? Yeah, that's kind of saying something, but that's just what I hear. I don't know much. I don't know what was going on with Spider-Man at the time other than the Mephisto stuff, but yeah. So, yeah, bad situation it seems for me, because I really would have loved to see what Hickman's original vision was. We'll have to see with the other writers who's going to take the lead after this. I don't know if Hickman's sticking around as the head of X, or he's just like the head editor of the line of how the story would go. But yeah, we're gonna have to see how this goes. So good luck to you, man, Hickman. I'm looking forward to Three Moons, Three Worlds book on Substack, so get ready for that, everybody. Anyways, this was Neo Reality Collective, signing out, everyone, and take care.
Be sure to donate to the brand and keep up to date with additional content on YouTube channels such as Neo Reality Entertainment, NRE The Wrestleverse, and NRE Pop Culture Omniverse.